So not only then are there differences between the King James and the other translations, when we put all of our translations out here, by the way, this might not be in your notes, so maybe here you want a pen or a paper, a pen or a pencil. When we put the NIV and the NASB, when we put the NIV and the Living, when we put any of them up there, we're going to find variances between our English texts. What's going on there? Well, we have different translation theories, and this works still to this day. When we translate modern languages, Chinese, to another language, there's theory about how to translate a word into another language. And you've got to admit that we have words that we use in English that other English speakers will know right away based on the context of what we're saying, how we're saying it, right? But a non-native English speaker who doesn't know the variety of a word may not understand what we're saying, right? One theory of translation theory would be functional equivalent. Functional equivalence used to be called dynamic equivalent. And this is much more when the Greek or the Hebrew scholar sits down and reads the ancient language. He then sits there and he thinks about what's the meaning of that sentence? And how would I take the meaning of that sentence and how would I translate it into an English sentence that would make sense? And this is helpful, but also sometimes hurtful. For example, in John 3, we get the Greek word pneuma. The Greek word pneuma is the word for wind. It's also the name for, or it's also the word for breath. It's also the word for spirit, either our spirit or the Holy Spirit. And there's a play on words going on in John chapter 3, where Jesus is talking to Nicodemus, and the Spirit moves, the wind moves, and so forth. Now, Bibles like the Good News Translation, the New Living Bible, or the Message Bible, these are much more samples of that kind of translation, where the person has sat down, thought about the meaning. What is the meaning? Not necessarily what are the words, but what are the meanings? And how would we say that then in English? The other would be formal equivalence or functional equivalence. That's when here is the Greek word. What is the best English word that matches that Greek word? And here it is. There we go. Move on to the next word. What would be the next? And so you get the best or the most functional translation of the words. But then in English you have a bit of a garbled sentence, because Greek syntax and Hebrew syntax is nothing like English syntax. And so then the translator has to sit there and has to decide, how do I take those words, keeping them those words, and put it into a sentence that you and I would understand? This is why you'll see in, for example, the New American Standard, which would be very, very, very far on this side of the scale, you'll find words in italics as you're reading along. That italics means it's not there in the Greek. It means it's there in the English to make the sentence a readable, understandable English sentence. Here we get, these are often called the literal translations or the word-for-word translations. The New American Standard, the King James, the English Standard, those kinds of Bibles would fall into this category. But here we have a little bit of a problem with the Greek language and the word love, because we have 4 different Greek words for the word love. Okay, one of them is only used once in the New Testament, but the other ones, eros, thank you. Eros, agape, and philia. And you've probably heard that agape is that true love or sacrificial love or some sort of ultimate love. Eros is, of course, that romantic kind of love, and philos, or philia, is that kind of brotherly love. But the problem is, the only word in English we have for it is love. And the word love in English does so many things. It's a very busy word. I love my wife. I love chili dogs. I just said two completely different sentences, and yet I said the exact same word, didn't I? And so here, that's where, even when we're trying to be formal in the equivalent, we'll still change things. We'll still add romantic love or brotherly love.
But we did understand the difference between the love that you have for your wife and the love that you have for your children. It's inherent because we're raised with that.
Absolutely, absolutely. Because we speak this language already, and because we know how we use the word love, I mean, you love your car, you love your house, you love your dog, I would love to go on a vacation. You know, all these ways that we use the word love, and nobody was confused that, wait, he loves his car? Like, well, with that, unless there are any questions, we are at a terrific place to take our break. I hope I've communicated why there are differences.